Hello and welcome to GameSpot's review of Rage 2. My name is Jake and I'm here with Michael. Michael, you reviewed Rage 2. You gave it a 6, which is fair. Give me the rundown of your review. What'd you think?
First things first is that combat is dope. Now, that's like the main attraction of this game, and I say that in my reviews. Like the superpowers, the weapons, they all feel great. The problem is that everything feels so short. Whether it's the main mission or if it's the side quests, everything just ends so abruptly. And I think also another thing worth mentioning is that the world building and kind of the storylines are not that great. I'm not asking a game to have a groundbreaking story, but give me a reason to be there. And that's another aspect in which it's underwhelming. But again, like I said, the combat's pretty sweet.
Well, why don't we start with that then? What makes the combat in Rage 2 so great?
So the superpowers called nanotrites are these abilities you have to take down your foes in a very gruesome manner, to be honest. There's like this, my favorite one is a slam, which is a ground pound. And you can upgrade it to a point where as soon as you go up in the air, you create this black hole where enemies just kind of get sucked into the center force of it, and then as soon as you smash down, you can splatter like 10 fools at once.
It's like a bloody mess.
Yeah, and it's super effective, to be honest, especially when you're fighting like a bunch of mutants or bandits all at the same time. It's very effective. It also just feels really good to use. And also the shatter ability, which is effective for taking out armored opponents. But also just like sending fools flying against the wall or out over a cliff. All that stuff just is so much fun to use. And also the weapons, like I mentioned, you get the standard stuff like a assault rifle, shotgun, and a rocket launcher, but the grav dart gun is really cool. You just shoot a fool a bunch with a needle, like almost like a needler.
Yeah, you
almost.
Like paint targets and then you fire another round where they're gonna go and they'll all fly at it.
Yeah, it looks really funny, but it's also effective on armored enemies. So there's use cases for all this stuff, as wacky as it may seem.
There's also Overdrive too, which almost puts a twist on your guns too that you have, right?
Yeah. So you go into Overdrive once you accumulate enough kills, and then it gives you an alternate fire mode for all your weapons. It makes them even more powerful. And Overdrive is super effective because it starts giving you more health as well. So you go into this mode where you're almost invincible and you're just like mowing fools down. And that's great. And with the superpowers, nanotrites in mind, and also the weapons that you have, you can kind of create this momentum where you're cycling through all of your abilities as you're going through all these rooms and tearing down your enemies. It's just a ton of fun to do.
Unfortunately, in your review, you also mentioned that the game doesn't really do a lot to keep up that rhythm. Once you get into a flow, it pulls you out pretty quickly. Like you'll finish the mission. What did you mean by that? Why don't you explain that?
Yeah, I'll start by talking about how the main missions are structured, because there's a couple main missions, and then everything just kind of ends before I kind of get my fill. Mm-hmm. And none of the main missions really build up to something, like, or very few times does it build up to something. Like I mentioned the mission where you go through this lab and then eventually you fight like a big monster in a courtyard. Like that's cool, but that's like one of the only situations in which the mission actually funnels you through a bunch of combat scenarios. Everything just kind of like ends with I don't know, not a bang, that's for damn sure.
With a pop-up telling you you've done it.
We'll get into that later. But yeah, it never surprises you. It never gives you like a distinct challenge at the end, or never like I said, never builds up to something, because you just kind of go through a couple rooms with some enemies, but it's all over before you can get your fill. And that also extends to the main quest overall too, because I spent like 12 hours to finish this game, but that's doing a bunch of the side quests. You could probably knock this main mission out in 8 hours maybe.
I bet people could do it less too if they were really trying.
Yeah, it's so short, and not only are the missions underwhelming, but just the overall structure of the campaign is underwhelming as well. And that extends to the side quests because, yeah, you get a map full of these different activities to do, like clearing out a bandit camp or clearing out a roadblock or going to a mutant nest. Like, those last for maybe like 2 minutes tops. And again, you're cut short before you can build that satisfying momentum that you're capable of with all of these weapons and abilities. So, yeah, it might look like there's a lot to do, but, you know, I get the gyrocopter, I fly to one side quest, and then I finish that in like a minute. Then I fly to the next one and finish that in a minute. And it never feels like things are connected. It never feels like I'm challenged or surprised in the side quests as well. There's a couple other things you can do, like convoys, which is like some car combat type stuff. Out in the open world, there's the MBTV stuff, and there's racing, but that doesn't uplift the game in the sense, and it doesn't make use of the best parts of this game. And that's the problem, is that the game never sets up the stage for you to do the cool things that you want to do. There are moments, but it just doesn't, there's not enough of it.
Hey, Lily, I'm eyeballing one sketchy looking place.
Yeah, things ain't finally safe no more. Go in prepared, Walker.
So another thing that was interesting in your review is you talked about how a lot of the missions don't really do anything with the open world. A lot of the missions are very focused in one area. It's never like get to point A and point B while people are chasing after you, or you need to hunt down someone who's on the run or something like that. It's always just go to this area, fight these enemies, and
then report back to whoever you did that mission for. It's disappointing because you have this vast open world that looks pretty cool, to be honest.
Diverse too. Like it's a pretty diverse post-apocalyptic world.
Yeah, you have those desert plains in the south, and then you have that jungle to the north, and it looks nice. It's just like there's one main mission that takes you to the jungle area. There's one main mission that takes you to the desert area, and they all take place in like indoors. And it's disappointing because like you built this awesome open world, but you don't use any of it. And I think about games like GTA and how they use their open world for their mission structure, whereas Rage 2 is just a reason to go from point A to point B. And then once I go through these missions, it's corridors or just like this secluded area, which would be fine if those missions actually, you know, lasted longer, gave me a challenge, or presented new things to me, but it doesn't make up for it in that regard. And now that I mention it, I also think about games like Doom and Wolfenstein, other Bethesda shooters, where those games are just like nonstop action. They make good use of their time. Now you might think like, oh, this game is like maybe 12 hours to beat. And so is Doom and Wolfenstein, but there's so much non-action in Rage 2 that it doesn't justify, that amount of time, really.
That's Jersey's armor.
Jersey. They killed him.
You're brave enough to put on his armor. You're brave enough to do his job.
Why don't we move on to world building and story, which is something also you felt was kind of lacking.
Yeah. For a post-apocalyptic world, you kind of expect this game to be wild and crazy and off the wall and all that.
Well, that's how they marketed it too.
Yeah, that's another thing too, is like all the buildups to this game is like it's gonna have attitude, it's gonna be badass, and it's gonna be deranged. But you kind of get that sense in the first 20 minutes of the game where they introduce these characters who you think are supposed to be important, and then they just kill them off. And I'm like, yeah, okay, like you're gonna surprise me by, subverting my expectations or whatever, and not caring about like traditional story beats. But the problem is like after that, it doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't build on that attitude. There is actually no attitude in this game. I was expecting more of that, but I just couldn't find it. And every attempt that they did to have sort of charisma or personality was just lame. Like I talk about that dude, what's his name, Clayton, who's supposed to be this douchebag or whatever, and you're supposed to hate him, but he just comes off as annoying.
This is the multi-watt nerve center of the Clegg Empire. My office, the cockpit from which I control my vast financial holdings.
Like, make me hate that character. He's a villain, and he's supposed to be like a piece of shit. Make me believe that he is, or give me a reason to hate him. He's just kind of like lame, and they have like these weird dialogue sequences that it doesn't do anything. And I'm not asking Rage to have groundbreaking story, like I said earlier. I just want to have a world that kind of has reasons to either care about these things or string all of these events together in some sort of coherent way.
Is there anything else you want to add that you may have not been able to touch on in your review, or just other things you think people should know about Rage 2?
I want to talk about those pop-up notifications, man. So every time you finish a side quest, you get a game pausing notification. It says, "Hey, you got $300. Hey, you also built up this this loyalty meter with a certain person." And I don't know, that's just annoying because for a game that's supposed to be fast paced and just like keeps going, for a progress bar or a notification for resources that you've earned, like just pausing the entire game. I'm like,
yeah, it does the same with tutorials too.
Yeah, it's constantly
the first
stopping you.
Third or fourth of the game was just like, press A to jump. Like, yep, I know.
Yeah, and that's another way this game kind of breaks momentum. But also, like I don't really care about the story or anything like that. But I at least want to listen to the dialogue sequences, and even those pop-ups just like happen while I'm in the middle of listening to a conversation. So, yeah, there's just a lot of small, odd design choices.
Ranger, huh? Oh, I haven't seen a Ranger here in a long time.
And there you have it. That's why GameSpot gave Rage 2 a 6 out of 10. Thank you for stopping by, and we'll see you next time.